All right, let's get started. Hey, hope everybody's doing well. This is our week 1 introductory video. Promise to keep it short, it's late. So this week, in week 1, we've got a lot of great stuff. I really like what the textbook has done here. Covers a lot of interesting stuff. We start off with a profile of Facebook and their international activities. I think we're all familiar with that company. It also talks things about globalization, internationalization. Some things really struck me. It talked about the unprecedented growth of international trade and investment. We'll have more to say about that here shortly. Key concepts, providing some basic background information we need to make sure that we're all familiar with. Things like trade, exporting, importing, global sourcing, international finance. We need to all realize that those are parts of international management, international business, and what we're studying in this class. Have a section here talking about how international business differs from domestic business. Talks about the 4 risks, including things like country risk, which we'll talk about here later in the chapter. Lots of times we've never really thought that the United States had a high degree of country risks in making it difficult for multinational managers to operate within a free market system. However, we have some challenges now that we'll become very familiar with during the semester. Interesting section also on who participates in the global economy. Of course, we've got multinational firms we've already talked about, small firms. There was a term here, distribution channel intermediary. So here on the border, we actually do a lot of this kind of stuff. We got a friend who's got a company who serves as a distributor of electronic products into Mexico and Latin America, has tremendous volume doing that stuff. So lots of times perhaps we're not familiar with things like distribution channel intermediaries. Read the chapter and get familiar with this. That's going to be great background information as we move through this class. Got another friend who's a freight forwarder, does tremendous business there. So it's important to realize what our region tends to specialize in, and we've got a bunch of these distribution channel intermediaries and freight forwarders. So read those, make sure you know what those refer to. Another great little section on why do firms internationalize. That's important background information that will help. It's also an ending case on Harley-Davidson. Harley-Davidson, very interesting company, international managers working at Harley. Some interesting choices, interesting situations they've encountered over the last couple years. You might want to do a Google search there. That might help answer for you a discussion board question. So the chapter basically talks about we got internationalization, we got globalization, everything's going great. International managers are going to have all kinds of opportunities to do stuff around the world. Current events, however, tell a different story. One thing to keep in mind here, this is not a political science class. I am not arguing for or against the current administration. I'm personally an independent, not a Democrat or a Republican. So just to emphasize, this is not a political science class. However, things are happening not only in the United States but elsewhere where we have a turn towards protectionism and interventionist governments, which have a severe impact on the opportunities international firms have, and of course international managers in charge of those. So we need to understand how the current situation and the role of national governments are increasing or decreasing the opportunities we have available. So some cool current event articles that talk about some of the challenges we currently have. One local talks about tomato market. Here on the U.S.-Mexico border, in this particular part of the border, we are the #1 importer of fresh fruits and vegetables into the United States from Mexico. Our port of entry is #1. Yay, #1. So things like Florida tomato growers coming up with protectionist measures such as increased inspections, which can be synonymous with delayed inspections and making it harder for us to do things in this part of our world. That's what our tomato article talks about. Farbridge, we have some challenges there, got an article there. Have a couple articles about Huawei. This is a Chinese company that the Trump administration is basically trying to shut down, and to a certain extent. And we'll read and see a video about what Huawei does and why that may be a good or a bad thing. Of course, U.S. and China currently engaged in a trade war. I got a couple articles about that. So what I'm asking you to do on the discussion board, for those of you who are brave enough to jump in and try to get that excellent rating, which is what required to have that contribute to your grade. You've got some great stuff about globalization, internationalization. You got some current event stuff about how we see a trend in the United States and elsewhere of perhaps a step away from that. And we need to integrate those and better understand how that might impact decision making on the part of international managers. So that's what I'm asking you to do on the discussion board. So good luck with that. Of course, I'm available if you have questions. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with on the discussion board. And have a great week.